All right, we are live, and this is a lovely new type of live stream that we haven't had at Uniform before, and it's called What Legacy. And my lovely colleague Alex, who is actually on the stream with me, came up with that. So, Alex, why don't you introduce yourself for the people who don't know you yet, and also what you want to be doing in this stream series?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. So the live stream is called What Legacy? And we're going to be talking about a lot of interesting subjects here. So I'm co-founder CTO of Uniform, and in my prior career, I spent 13 years at Sitecore doing all sorts of technical things, and so the ecosystem and community is still near and dear to me. So this live stream series, it's not just going to be about Sitecore, it's just going to be about established CMS DXP systems and how they work with modern composable front-end technologies. But this particular one will be focused on Sitecore specifically. So I'm excited about it. There's a lot of stuff we have in store. We're actually going
Oh
to
yeah.
be taking more of a practical approach. So instead of killing you with slides, we're just going to show you with what's possible and show you magic happening from scratch, creating things in front of your eyes. So
Exactly.
hopefully you'll find it
Live
fun.
code is the name of the game. We like living on the edge.
Yeah.
Figuratively and actually in real time, because we're going to do some stuff on Edge, I imagine. So I'm just gonna we will start with a few slides, right? So I'll put something on that you came up with for this stream. So when I saw this slide, I was like, "Holy moly, lots of things!" So what is this stuff?
I mean, this is just sort of topics areas that we'll be covering, not just today, but next live streams as well. I think challenging the notion of legacy, that's why it's called What Legacy? Kind of
Exactly.
playing words here, where we will be challenging the preconceived notion that you need to do full rip and replace, and you need to learn a bunch of new skills. It's partially maybe true, partially, but we will be challenging that it has to be so dramatic. So we're specifically talking with the Sitecore community, and we will be using a mix of technologies here, a mix of concepts like established technologies from prior decade and what's new in this new decade. We're gonna be talking about composability, what like our take on composability, true composability. What is experience layer? What is experience modeling? But I think what will anchor, and this is something we see from our customers that adopted Uniform together with Sitecore, they see opportunity to reuse a lot of existing CMS skills and content, information architecture, modeling in this new concept with headless technologies, with composable architecture. So this is really exciting, and I think this we need to unpack what this means and connect kind of both two worlds and two bubbles together. I think that will be fun.
And
So yeah.
quite interestingly, they're probably not that far apart. And so what you just mentioned about this, a lot of people who've been working in like an older system or something that's not super composable yet, all these skills are transferable. You still need to understand data. You still need to understand modeling, how a front end connects, and lots of that information is out there already. So I'm kind of excited to see what you come up with of what stuff is transferable. Um, Alex, if you okay, you can actually move the slides. There we go. Perfect.
There we go. So specifically, want to spend just a couple of moments to talk about context setting because just showing things out of context may not lend well, and because there's many things happened in Uniform transformed many things over many times over the last couple of years.
Oh
So
yes.
we want to kind of bring you up to speed into what we can do, what we do these days. And just jump into walkthrough, and we'll finish with maybe some Q&A and next steps. So that's the plan. Setting the context. What is uniform? If you ask different people in different times of exposure to uniform, they'll probably have different answers. So we started with uniform for Sitecore product. This was our only product back in the day, way back in the day,
Yeah,
in
exactly.
this startup years, right? Similar to dog years, right? In startup years, that's ancient.
It to
Uh,
me, when we had that, it feels like 17 years ago.
yeah, sounds about right.
Exactly.
Um, so that product on the version 7 now, so that
Exactly. Yeah.
shows the versioning almost caught up with the cycle versioning. So some folks got to know us as a tool for headless CMS, as a personalization A/B testing capability that kind of plugs in that gap. But recently, a couple of years ago, we there was a Uniform 2.0 conceptually, which is a lot more than just those things that I've mentioned. We still have a Uniform for Cycle product, but we've matured our SaaS platform, and we have shaped what is known as digital experience composition platform. And this is really exciting. This is very um, it's a new concept, but it should be familiar to folks that joining us from CMS DXP landscapes. If you think about a DXP architecture that would be built in 2020, it will be composable, right? It will be multi-source. So you'll be able to connect content sources from maybe ecosystems that never talk to each other. So imagine Psycho, Oracle, Salesforce, and Adobe sort of products working together in unison. I mean, why not? There is a whole plethora of powerful headless API first technologies. So it doesn't have to be established technologies or exclusively headless technologies. It could be a mix. And this is where Uniform Mesh comes together to connect all these content sources and bring it over to one page. This is we call them compositions. We don't call them pages because compositions can exist in other channels. And compositions are built out of components, and they're built in a visual experience builder we call Canvas. So that's kind of how these two layers come together. And on top of that, a really nice sweetener is uniform context that is both configuration of personalization A/B testing and execution of personalization and A/B testing, and it runs at your CDN level of choice. That's why we have this nice edge layer. So there's a lot here to unpack, and we're actually going to be focusing on Mesh and Canvas in our walkthrough and see how this connects to Sitecore as the content source. We're going to start with one content source, but we can add as many as we want. And maybe in the next live stream, we kind of build on top of the story and start adding more and more integrations. So that's uniform as of now, and things change rapidly. So next time we talk, maybe
Oh,
this will
my
get updated.
other stuff will happen. I think before we go to our one of my favorite slides in many of those decks, um, this doesn't like if you want to use uniform and put Sitecore in, it doesn't mean that you have to stop using Sitecore. You can, of course, but you don't have to. It's just a lovely, different way of solving this puzzle of what is a composable architecture. So I just wanted to give that like one extra little thing because sometimes people think, oh, we cannot use Sitecore anymore if we do something like this, but that's really not true. It's just a matter of you know plugging things in essentially, and then
That's a part
not
of us
using glue.
challenging. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, that's a challenging thing to do, but it's also you will see Alex will be doing that in the stream, and it's actually relatively easy, and we'll do it without glue code. So now that's a lovely bridge to this crazy
exactly.
slide, but it's one of our favorites.
Even though we will
We
have
had Buba.
technical hi Buba, we have technical audience joining. I'm actually going to stay away from code as much as I can, and planning not opening up Visual Studio
Yeah,
at
this is our
all.
challenge. More clicks, less code, and you'll see that it's still cool. I promise.
Exactly. So what is that we gonna do? Well, our goal here is to do ultimate makeover of existing Sitecore solution built a few years back using MVC and extend its lifetime and instantly modernize, reuse existing investments, and we're gonna chop off the front end completely, connect it to a modern front end, and to help you conceptualize, here's before and after. So we're gonna take that solution, we're gonna discard anything related to the view part in MVC. So all the rendering will be taking place in Next.js outside of CMS, powered by Canvas and Mesh. And we're gonna move instantly from a monolithic architecture. So from this gray monolith that, think 3 layers, inside of mostly any CMS built in this era, there is raw content layer at the bottom, presentation layer, and experience layer on top. So presentation layer, this is where your pages, layouts, renderings sit, and personalization, A/B testing, analytics. This is it's built on top of that presentation layer. Right? It allows you to personalize on component level. So we're going to move from that to a composable architecture just in front of your eyes, really. And what this will allow us is to move from origin-based processing and rendering and personalization. This means there is a server or a set of servers somewhere in one data center, maybe a couple if you have enough money, to a completely CDN-based approach. Right? And
Exactly.
this means that you can move from single source experiences, meaning that CMS is the only content source. And if you need more, you integrate through a CMS, which can be complicated and expensive. We'll move to a multi-source environment. So this is after. So you can see we're going to retain the content layer usage, but we're going to move over. In this case, we're essentially going to reconstruct the presentation layer and experience layer in uniform and see how easy and fun it is. But all the content will still come in live, and it will be cached by our edge side edge fencing infrastructure all around the globe. So that's the plan. Let's do
All
this.
right. Let's swap sources, and we're literally just going to go to your. This is your screen, and you have nothing, and so we're going to come up with some
Nothing.
awesomeness here.
On top of that, I have empty project here. So I have a
Yes.
team, actually no project. So I'm actually going to start completely from scratch. What I'm going to be doing, instead of building code in front of you, because we do need some presentation code to render our goodness, we're going to use
Yes.
component starter kit. And this comes with a few components already in we can reuse. There's some heroes with a few variants. There's some card blocks we're going to use. And these card blocks can be rendering any sort of content, articles, products. So they're built to be generic, reusable experience components. We
So
even
I
have
have
the
a cheeky
torso.
question here. How is this
Yeah.
different from SXA?
Well, good question. I mean, it is a component library, so as a concept, it shares the idea that you need components. I think
Yeah.
that's the only thing conceptually it shares with SXA. There's a lot more to SXA as extension to CMS itself,
Yeah.
as new paradigms, etc. But this is more pure component library. It's open sourced. It's built with React and on Next.js. So it's built in 2023, right? So that's using latest greatest tech that we have.
Just modern front end
TNT
React,
stack,
all the stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Tailwind,
Yeah.
TypeScript, Next.js. Yeah, exactly. And this is a rapidly evolving set of components as well. So that's what we're going to use. And we're going to use a Sitecore instance. What we're going to do is we're going to attempt to rebuild a page like this, but with completely different markup, but reusing the content as it comes out from Sitecore as is. So we're talking about one carousel component, three of these kind of image blocks. We have a 3-column kind of situation here with some call to action, a quote, and a list of news. And footer, we're gonna ignore. We actually have header and footer that come together with components. So we're just gonna configure it. We're not gonna connect
And
it to
so
Sitecore.
this habitat thing is literally what comes out of the Sitecore 8 or 9 by default, I imagine. Or is this something you also install on top?
This is something you install on top as
Right.
a kind of example site from the past. Yeah, it's long been deprecated as well. So this is very old school, right? So we're
But that's
connecting
good because we have people running it, right?
2015. Yeah,
Oh wow, yeah. Because I remember having this stuff and then building off of this and then later on maybe installing SXA on Sitecore 8.2. That was the norm. And there's still lots of projects like that.
yeah, exactly. So let's get started. So I'm gonna use npm to initialize my latest version of CLI and issue new command called new. And what this command is gonna do in my empty directory is gonna ask, hey, would you like an auth token? Yes, we need to authenticate, and so we can deploy. Oh, and it's not pasted. Let me try again. Well, that's
Copy.
copy paste.
Yeah, there we go.
Perfect. Success. So if we pick the only team I have is called What
Yeah,
Legacy.
exactly.
Then I have a choice between Next.js and Nuxt frameworks. And in Next.js, we have that component starter kit, and it's now a recommended option. So let's pick that. Live stream will be the name of my project. And what it's going to do is going to generate API keys, going to install dependencies, and is going to deploy my project content right into my team. So you can see now project is automatically created, and we're going to see components, compositions appear here. So this is happening as we speak.
Yeah, I don't think it has done the import yet. Or maybe it's starting now.
Yeah, exactly. So components will be created for each of these components. We'll have a component library. There we go.
There we
So
go.
we now have magically things popping up. So you can see we have a few of those. We have compositions, and they are describing structural layout for each page, really. We also have a special global composition we're going to use, and this is what controls navigation footer. We'll get back to that in a second. And we have project map. Project map is that site map that we have in for the web channel context. So think about them as hierarchy of your pages. And if we did everything correctly, we're running on localhost 3000, and we should be able to open up this app and render it. This is now running a local version of that Next.js app, and you can see it's rendering exactly what we saw on the hosted version. So I'm going to close this one, and we're going to just use this guy instead.
Isn't
But
it
I'm not going to
ridiculous?
open the code.
But, I just wanted to say, isn't it ridiculous that your copy paste took longer than setting up a whole project that's already running?
Yeah,
It's a
that's
little
my
crazy. This is
keyboard issue.
modern times.
Exactly. All right. So we got stuff here. This means that we have preview wired up. This is our latest version of Canvas, our experience builder tool. And you can see here, I can start edit stuff. Hello, live stream. And notice this is full inline editable, and not just in context editing, inline editing, because all of this content is now temporarily stored inside of Canvas. What we want to do, we're going to connect my components with my content sources, in this case, Sitecore. So that will come a little bit later. I have my structural representation of the page. I can hide it as well if I just want to focus on content. And yeah, this I can add components. So this should be pretty familiar. Anybody who's seen WYSIWYG editing from the past. What we're gonna do here first, though, we're gonna add an integration, Sitecore integration, and that is one option that we have. There's also plenty of other options that we have, but since this live stream is focused on Sitecore, that's exactly what we're gonna do first. So what is going to do is going to allow our project to communicate with that Sitecore instance that I have set up. And because I'm in Grok tunneling to it, I can just connect to it via Sitecore settings. But since we're going to be using next gen mesh capabilities, we're actually going to go and set it up elsewhere.
Oh, so we
Um,
don't have to use the integration like this potentially.
yeah, it's installing our new data sources and our
Ah, okay.
ability to create data types. So we'll get back to that in a second. I wanted to add one more integration. This is ThemePack, and ThemePack allows us to have um, nice extensions to our Canvas user interface, giving us ability to control things like layouting, colors for different components, and it's based on the idea of a theme. So we're
Yeah.
going to use uniform theme for now as default. We can also change to Java drip, and later on we're going to create actually a custom theme, so we can customize some colors and fonts and stuff like that.
So
So
I
that
think before we jump into adding data sources, maybe one
Mhm.
sentence about how Uniform likes to operate, because generally these compositions, you can see them, they're completely visual, right? And so we're making visual compositions as your pages, and we store some data, but the idea is that you store the design related data for your page. Is this a two-column component? Things like that. All that stuff here, like available components, that's a sentence you would store in Uniform, not in Sitecore. But let's say these blocks are like articles or whatever. These should come from another system. And then you can, so essentially what you're doing is you're adding data sources to Uniform and then bind everything from these data sources directly to your components. And then when you hit save, there is no code to write because all the connections are already in Uniform. I just wanted to give this like little extra thing, because this is why we add an integration and we add data sources later to be able to connect. And it's all connecting visually to your front end components.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Tim. This is really important to highlight the responsibility, ownership of different sorts of content.
Exactly.
Uh, for folks experienced in Sitecore, think about rendering parameters. And rendering parameters as a thing never really fit the core content model because that's closely aligned to the component presentation layer itself. And that's the definition of volatile presentation experience content. So it's things like which title style do you want to use? Is this really core content? Um, we argue not. Which color of the button for your primary call to action to use, right? If I link to, say, learn more, and link to a page, let's say, learn more about layouts and containers, um, I can interact with primary, secondary, etc. styling, and this is really presentational data, very much channel specific, and instead of being core part of the core content model. So you would pull title, description, images from where you store it in CMS or DAM, and we will add everything else. That also allows keeping the pollution to minimum inside of your core content model, which is also
Yeah,
pretty important
you
for
see that all
sustainability.
the time where people are adding little checkboxes and whatever color drop downs in their data models that they use across different devices for you, for example. And on your mobile, maybe you don't have a featured section with a big image, but you did add that checkbox to your data model, polluting it completely. And then I've had projects where you had 25 of these extra checkboxes, and then somebody in India decided to clean up, remove one checkbox, and then
Mhm.
the Chinese website is down. And we've had many of those instances, and you don't want to have that, right? Your domain data needs to stay clean. And so Uniform takes over that other bit of where the creative design data lives, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. So what are we going to do here? So since we wanted to reconstruct this page, let's start. I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to call it demo. Um, and I'm going to use page composition type. So this is going to be a demo page. Instead of messing with the home page, I'll just create a new one. I'll call it demo page. This was a page title. This is my page metadata control, open graph, and stuff like that.
Oh, I
Uh,
haven't seen this new magic yet. I love the grouping of the parameters.
oh yeah. Yeah, so based on the intent, you can kind of keep things
Yeah,
clean.
exactly.
And by default, you can see I have hero placed and breadcrumbs. We also have breadcrumb component. We don't have that on this page, so I'm gonna delete it. But we're going to start with this one. So even though it's a carousel, but as we know, carousel is just an array of some other components. This is kind of, we have a beginning of a carousel. So we can essentially reuse hero as a generic design system component to serve as a slide in a hero carousel. So we don't have to create a brand new component. We can just reuse existing one. And this is the beauty of keeping your core content model separate from your experience model. It can depart and it can be more generic, reusable, and that's the whole point. What we don't want is we don't want content. We want to reuse content, right? We already have that in Sitecore. So what we're gonna do is bring that external content, and we can do that through connecting external content to
To the
our
composition.
components, right? Exactly. But notice that we don't have any data types though. That's not a problem because we already have Psycho integration in place. So this means that we can create this new data types right here. Or we could have created that in Canvas, but I wanted to show you that here. This a little bit focused experience. So what is a data source? Is our conduit to an external data source. We support HTTP request JSON data as to standard one, and each integration will register their own. So Psycho integration did exactly that. So here I'm gonna do initial configuration of my Sitecore setup here. All we need is an API key, configuration name. This is a read-only API key, so I'm okay sharing this
Yeah, I was
publicly.
was about to say, are we going to steal this thing or screenshot?
And the communication here is really through Psycho Services client. So we have a tiny connector installed on Psycho instance, but it facilitates essentially configuration area, but majority of communication just goes through standard Psycho Services client here. And this is what we're using to connect to the Psycho instance with. So that's it. And now we're entering a data type configuration. So each type of content that we want to bring in from our Psycho instance here. And here I want to bring some article content, and I'm going to bring some quotes. So these are data source content items that I need. They also have some teasers. So we're actually going to start with teasers because they are actually a content type in Sitecore that registers all the data for those slides that we see in carousel, in heroes, etc., etc. So that's the first content type we need to bring in. Because we operating in the Sitecore turf here, we the integration adjusts to that. So you can see we have tree-based selection of which templates do we want to allow. In this case, since we select our teaser, so I'm going to go to project, common. I know the location of my template. So I only want to allow selection of teasers inside of this data type. And I can find my teaser here and set up the selection. You don't have to do this. This case, you can allow any content item from Sitecore to be selected for this data type, but we want to constrain it. So you cannot pick a home page when we expect a teaser, right? And for data source locations, we need to scope where's that coming from. So in this case, we know there's a global folder here with all the teasers. So that's one location. Then we can add another location with, I know we have some content stored underneath local content that we want to use. And you can add as many of them as we want. Keep things as default. I'm going to call this teaser because that's the name of the Psycho data template I'm using. Save and test. And now this shows what the business users would see when they associate content with components. So they see a Psycho item selector. And because I constrain selection to only these areas, only see these areas for selection. You can see I cannot select anything else other than a teaser because we constrain the selection as well, and all items are disabled. If I do fetch data, you can see this is what Uniform Mesh is going to get access to. The whole output from Sitecore with all of the JSON data coming back from Psycho Services client. This means that I can instantly connect any of my components to any of these attributes coming back
So
from
Alex,
Sitecore.
this Sitecore service that you're now connecting to, did you have to install that, or is that default in all of these Sitecore versions?
The Sitecore Services client is pretty much default, like
Okay.
since
So you don't
Sitecore
have to
8.2.
install something in Sitecore for this.
There is a uniform connector that brings configuration.
Mhm.
So that's the only tiny thing that needs to be installed there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a part of our Psycho connector distribution. Um, so we have our content now. We can attach our teaser content with our hero, and in this case, there's a couple ways to do it. So I didn't save removal of my breadcrumb. I can do this right in Canvas. This is not what developer would do. Developer would go somewhere else, which we'll go there next, but I wanted to show you this as quickly as possible. So instead of title, description stored in Canvas here, I can do connect now. And because I have new data type called teaser, I can go and essentially pick which teaser I'd like. Let's see, simplicity. This becomes a data resource, addressable data resource I can now bring into any component on this composition. And because we have this preview, we can pick a teaser title, we can pick teaser description. In this case, for description, we're going to use a summary. I can also search here. So if I know my field name, I can just quickly find it. For iBroad text, we're actually going to keep it optional. And for the image, we're going to link to teaser image URL. So you can see here, we have a fully qualified URL coming back. And that's our slide, right? So we're not there yet with full carousel, but that's not a problem. We can add a carousel. We have one of the components in component library. And again, this is in case if you don't have components, you want to start with component starter kit, you don't have to. You can bring your own React components, your own design system if you have it. This is just kind of a starting point. And you can see a carousel has a slot inside of it, and we can just drag our hero into that slot. And now we have a single slide carousel. I can duplicate it, and now we have two, but it's kind of silly to have two of the same slides, so we're not gonna do that. Instead, I'm gonna show you a different way to configure this hero, because what we don't want to have is we don't want to have business user assembling these pages to do this binding every time, right?
That's
So
a
that
little abstract and technical if you're not a nerd like you and me, right? You
exactly.
don't want to be going through all the JSON, I guess.
What if we could persist this sort of configuration somewhere, this whole default binding in somewhere, so every time a hero is placed, it already comes pre-connected, and all I need to do is pick external piece of content. So that's what patterns are for. So patterns is, think about them as sort of special entities on top of components, which bring that default configurability. So I'm gonna find my component, Cohero component in my component library, and add a new pattern. And this pattern, we can call it slide hero, because this is not just a hero. Hero is going to be connected to a teaser, and we're going to call it slide. In this case, I can do this sort of configuration now on the pattern level, and it becomes more reusable. So in this case, I can pick my teaser. Again, let's do like getting started, call it teaser. In this case, I can either use this as default or not. In this case, I will ask every time this pattern is used, provide a new instance of this teaser. If I do want to have this as a global default, I can keep that box checked. But in this case, our use case is different because we're going to need to create 3 of these, and we're going to pick different content every time. So for title, again, this is going to be title, description is going to be summary, and image is going to be teaser image. We also have other attributes we can use if we wanted to, like there's a display name. Let's do that.
Yeah, that's nice.
And now I can pick which display variant should be default. In this case, we have a couple options: image left, image right, and background image. I do like background image, and I'm gonna use this as default. And I'm actually not gonna allow override of this, but I'm gonna allow override of all the other values as well. And this means that if you wanna make a change of content without touching Sitecore, you can, and you can override any value at any point in time, and you can control it. So think about it, pattern is that instance of a component with that configurability that we just created. And now, instead of dropping generic heroes, we can drop our slide hero instead. You can see here it shows up in our options automatically. So it's still a hero, but it comes already pre-configured. So all I need to do here, notice we have a new pattern data selection. All I need to do is pick a piece of content. So I think we have one on flexibility. You can see, and everything else comes with that. Second one will be about flexibility, extensibility. Let's do extensibility and simplicity. So we have 3 slides, and we can reorganize them. Move this one up. So yeah, that's it. So this is how much easier it is. Once the pattern is set up, you just pick which content needs to go into that pattern, and that's pretty much the only thing you need to do.
And Alex, if you want, for maybe flexibility, you can say let's make some, because you have everything is overridable, right? So you might, for one of those heroes, you can actually change something.
Oh yeah, so you can disconnect, and now you have ability to do anything you want inside of it and override this value.
Yeah, exactly. That's super cool. And potentially what you could actually do is, if like this image is too light for this text, you might want to allow the display variant to be overridable, so you can put the image on the left side, for example. But just
Yeah.
as that's how flexible it is. And when you build your own component, you can choose any of this stuff based on your own design system. We just came up with these defaults because we like them and they seem to fit. But you can build anything as complex as you want, or as simple as you want, or just grab a design kit like Kickstarter DS or some Tailwind related stuff. You can just put it in here and go.
Yep, exactly. And because we're running in dev mode, I didn't even have to publish. So this is all coming live. So this is how the page looks like. We have header and footer that comes from a global composition, and we have our carousel built out. So let's build more stuff, because we have a couple more components, and things will get even more interesting here. So notice we have these 3 guys here. So how do we do that? Well, we have a card block component, and this card block component is very reusable as well. And these cards, if we drop a card, I'll show you how this looks like. I think it's exactly what we need. It has an image, text, so we can stub it up real quick here, just so you can see how this looks like. Image, copy image address, get the image going, close enough. We also have a CTA here. So for CTA, we can do read more and keep it a link and link to, say, components page. So we don't have this page created yet. If we had that page created, we'll just link to it. And here you can configure the themes, and this, I think this is close enough. Of course, this sets us up for nice collaboration with expert front-end engineer that can fine-tune Tailwind and bring that look and feel that you desire here. We're not going to touch any of that, right? So imagine collaborating on 2 tracks where you setting up structures, you configure stuff, and then front-end engineers having times of their lives working with modern, fast dev experience, with Tailwind, with Next.js, and running the show there, and completely unopinionated experience. So whatever, if they want to use something else, not Tailwind, not a problem as well. So that's kind of the workflow team
But
workflow that this setup
the thing
unlocks.
that I love about this is, imagine you are working at an agency and you're the front end developer, and the CMS choice was not made yet, or Sitecore is there, but you need to shuffle some stuff around or whatever, and it takes 2 weeks. You can literally build your whole website just by stubbing it like this, like Alex just did, copy pasting content into Uniform, build your production front end, QA your production front end, and later on you just connect the data from Sitecore, and then suddenly you can work in parallel rather than waiting for the backend people. So front end people are always late, and then QA spills over. What if you can QA what you've built as a mock first, and then 2 weeks later the data comes in, and then maybe there's a few tweaks because the text is too long, and you're good to go. So that's another sort of unexpected awesomeness that you get with an approach like this.
Like, so I'm just gonna set up some data types for a couple more demos. I know these content types, and I know we're gonna bring articles and teasers. So for that card, we're actually gonna use article. For the quote, I'm actually gonna use a quote as a separate content type. Teasers, quote, and I know my quotes are under global, and this will be useful for us to get. There we go. Definitely gonna call it quote. Cool. Let's save and test it real quick. And this is how quote selection will look like. We pick one of the quotes, and this is what Mash is gonna have access to. So that looks good. So this will give us ability to complete a couple of more components here. So card block, notice that this is also not connected yet. So we can go to our component itself and add a new pattern. So in this case, because we'll be linking to articles, it's going to be an article card. And this article card is going to map to a new article data type. I'm going to pick one of them, like introduction, just to set things up. Also, it's not going to come as default. It's going to ask us to actually provide value. And we're going to map this once. Title, description, I think it's come from summary. And you can see it's totally fine for your experience model or view model depart from the way your underlying source is structured. It's totally okay. For the image, I think we're going to use this one. And let's call it a day. In this case, in the overrides, I'm going to allow variant override as well, so you can see how this looks like. And now we have pattern ready to go. So let's go back to our demo page. And now instead of generic cards, I'm actually going to remove this one. I'm going to create an article card. An article card will link to an article. So you can see I can only select articles. So my introduction article. I'm going to create one more here with getting started. And one more article card. Project, habitat. How about this one? There we go. So that's the three cards we have. You can see here, the only thing that we're missing is read more. And read more can be added either as canvas data. So if we store pages, if we move over all the pages from Sitecore to project map, we're going to have them in our project map tree. So in this case, I haven't done this yet, so I'm just going to put a placeholder one. You can see now I can even modify my call to actions per card if I wanted to. In this display variant, we have two. I can actually switch from one display variant to another, and developers can add more display variants as well. So that's the second row done. Let's move on to this one because this is going to be interesting. Here, we have a couple of things here. We have three components in a row, so we're actually going to need to have a grid to place them. And we have a quite interesting one with the latest news. So since we're talking mostly about single item sort of components. In this case, this is not a single item components. It's a list of news that comes back from Sitecore, maybe from search. So that's a separate challenge for us to deal with. Um, so let's go get going on that. I'm gonna create one more component here, which will be a container. Um, and we have a couple of container options. We have a flex container, grid container here, and you can add your own containers. I'm gonna use a flex container, and here it's gonna be, we can control direction, flex wrap, etc. And again, this is just kind of an example of how container component can be built. You can build your own. So first one in the container, we have our, this looks like a call to action, but I think we can reuse our teaser or our slide, actually slide hero here, because it sort of looks like a hero and it has title, text, and a link. So
Just no image this time.
no image this time, exactly. So I think is the download piece of content that we need to bring in. And you can see here, because that content doesn't have an image, it's not displaying well. So what we're going to do here is actually going to edit this pattern, and we're going to allow override for the variant. And this gives me ability to change background image variant to a different variant. The default one, image left and image right. You can see here this, because there is no image, it just displays better with different text color, etc. So it just fits this use case better. And the only thing that we're really missing is our call to actions. So if we're going to be linking to a page, we're actually not going to connect it to Sitecore. But in terms of a call to action itself, we can go and actually find that text on the link that's stored in Sitecore and actually reuse that. Check this out. Pretty close, pretty close.
Oh, you might want to center it. Maybe if you set to the default variant, would it center?
Yeah,
There we go.
this is better. All right, so that's one, but we have other components we need. So this is a quote component. For quote component, what I'm thinking we can use, so
Maybe
we
the
need an
content
image.
component or something. Oh, it does have an image though.
Yeah, but we do need a separate pattern for that, because we're going to be linking to another piece of content. I think we might need to create another pattern for hero, I think. Let me see. I think maybe a call to action.
Yeah, I think you can try that. So interesting. Like while Alex is looking for one of the components that can fit, so essentially, what we are literally just building a front end with our these existing components now. And if you wanted to, let's say you're moving from Sitecore to another CMS, but it's going to take you a year, you can literally just add any other CMS or any custom data that you might have as data sources, and that can also feed this. Or you use only the Sitecore media library and do the rest by yourself. Or you use Cloudinary as media, or you use Algolia for search results, and you can kind of mix and match everything up. And if you then at one point did want to leave Sitecore, even though you might not have to, you could do that and then slowly move it out, right? And so it's only clicks in the end, because we haven't touched code yet, because our front end doesn't have to connect to anything. That's what makes it so cool. And all the data, when you hit save, it actually is stored on the CDN edge. So it's super, super fast and cached.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what did you opt
we'll
for?
show that. I think I'll use another card. Card is very reusable,
Exactly. Yeah.
so why not? But there's also this badge label. So I'm actually gonna
Maybe the
use
name.
name of the title. Let's see how this works. So I'm gonna use an extra or a large badge, and let's put this pattern to work. So time check, we have about 10 minutes. I think we're tracking. So what I'm going to do here, add one more variant, which is where's my
Did you just made a variant, right?
yeah card? Yeah, it's a quote.
Quote card. Interesting.
Not showing up yet.
There it is on the bottom.
Quote card. Okay. But I think I want it. I want it here. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
So here, because we picking a quote here, I have another piece of content to select, and look at that. Something happened with this guy as well. So let me fix that. So here's a second component, and we almost there. So this looks passable. Anders is
Passable is
looking
the word.
great.
Not all front-end developers in this stream might agree with you, but for data purposes, we're very close.
Yeah, we're decoupling work streams here. Front-end developer magic can apply on top.
Exactly.
All right, so finally the list of news, and this is a
fun
really
one.
peculiar one. Yeah. So we have ability. There's a couple of approaches here. One approach is that we can plug in what we call a model builder, and it allows us to tap into any controller that you already have and register. So if you already have code that delivers a list of latest news in .NET code, you can actually register that with our uniform connector and turn this into model builder, which we can reference. But I thought we'll start with another approach, and that approach also helps us showcase ability to add integrations to content sources we may not have official integration for. So if you have a REST API endpoint, you can bring data in. And in Sitecore, there's a couple of flavors. One of them is OData API service. So what I thought, why not bring list of news articles through OData interface and essentially using HTTP request and building a search query instead of picking content items individually.
So you're going to just call the Sitecore API yourself from here directly.
Exactly. So this is
here we go.
This is the API endpoint. This is familiar to any Sitecore developer.
Oh, that's a very familiar page. Can we show that?
I don't know what I clicked there.
I saw that many times. I'm sorry. So this just makes me happy to see that again.
Here we're fetching 4 latest news items based on the template name news article. So if we increase it to 4, we'll get array of 4 items instead. So we can work with that. So we can actually construct a new data type using this HTTP endpoint details. So why don't we do that?
So essentially, we just built Postman into Uniform, but then it stays, and you can use that as a data source, and it's cached on the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
So any data source you have, no matter how you want to query it, you can put this into Uniform.
Yep. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So it needs a base URL, which is this. Also, there is a query string parameter Sitecore API key, which we're gonna use. And this one is actually gonna get encrypted together with the data source. Let's call it Sitecore OData. And now this connector is ready to go. All we need now is provide details on how we want to query our item endpoint. So we have a couple of query string parameters we're going to use. We're going to use filter, and filter provides a way for us to filter by any search criteria here. In this case, we can hard code it to news article, or we can create a new variable called template name. And this variable will be replaced for us whenever we use this data type. And UI will be auto-generated for us as well. For the top, we can hard code it to 3, or we can actually get another variable name of top and use that instead. So this will be more dynamic. The expansion through $expand, we can just hard code it to fields. This will instruct our data to return the projection with the fields. And I think that's it. So let's call it you
Use
can
or something.
specify template.
Oh
Because
yeah,
it's more
exactly.
generic, right? It
Yeah, you
can
can
be
choose.
anything. It's not.
Exactly. That's cool.
So this is how the UI will look like. So uniform mesh will automatically generate us the UI. So here we can paste in the name of the template, news article, how many we want. Let's say we want 2, and fetch, and this is our 2 articles. And now we can link them to our component. That's how easy it is to activate any data source. So let's go ahead and do that.
And by the way, I've done this with GraphQL endpoints as well. It's totally easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So for that, let me. So what are we gonna do here? Is gonna create. We need a repeater of sorts, right? So we have an array here. What we're gonna get, but we need to map it to our component. So I'm gonna create another container here. Let's call it flex container. And here we're gonna add a loop, and this loop will actually gonna be that repeater that will be connected to our new data source. So items by template, news article, top 3. We're gonna call it articles as a resource. Now we have ability to link to it, and we can link to the array itself. By establishing this connection, we now can place a component inside of the loop. In this case, we have a generic content component that could work, I think. We can add something more interesting later, but I think this is good enough. Content. And now I can connect it once. You can see here, I'm automatically getting an array item from that loop. So I can now connect it to my fields. Which field I have here? News title. Here is the value. And for the text, I think I have this news summary with this value. I can control presentational aspect, but that's we needed the date actually. So we needed the date. Let's do this creative date. This is probably another date. So that's it. That's how easy it is to map an array. Of course, the styling is different here, but front-end developer can go and create a bespoke.
You can
component.
make it a list in your Flex container and then move it up one, and it's going to be pretty close, I think. So if you just make it
Yeah.
column
Let's do a column.
and then move this one up, exactly.
There we go.
It's not the same, but you get the drift, right?
Exactly. Then let's get the news label here. Roll H2. We're getting there. We're getting there.
There we go.
Another way to do it, and I think it's even cooler, is leverage what we call model builders. So model builders is something that will allow us to essentially reuse all of the .NET server-side code that you already have. So imagine you have some ORM tool that you use to create view models that you feed into your views. So this is a documented feature. You can register that existing code you already have that is doing some logic, some business logic, maybe some transformation, whatever you are doing here, and you can effectively source into it. So with that, I have this model builder I can reference, and I can just show real quick the mechanics of doing that. We can add another type. This will be a Sitecore, actually existing Sitecore connection. Add a new data type. And in the exact model builders, we can actually target that model builder based on its metadata. So I know it's latest news and parameter name is data source. I can call it latest news, and then check this out. This is how what the way it would work. You pick any model builder needs a route of operation. In this case, this will be location where to fetch the news articles, and then it's gonna, when we do fetch data, if we look into underscore model news, check this out. We have 3 news items in the array, but instead of returning generic item model from all data, this only returns 3 attributes because my .NET code that runs on the Sitecore server reduces that data set to only 3 key attributes already formatted and everything. So this will be even easier to connect without uh, using HTTP endpoint. This is just another option to reuse your existing investment that you
So
put
this
in
one
the
I hadn't
composable
seen
array.
before. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This was my next question because when I worked a lot with Sitecore, we did lots of this kind of stuff to kind of just clean it up and have backend people merge things together and make it happen. So it's awesome. I hadn't seen this one before.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I know we're running out of time. Last thing I want to show you is how fast the actual API is. So after you build this composition and you publish it, calling it from our global endpoint, which is running at the edge, this is the type of performance, 54 milliseconds to retrieve this whole data set. And this is not data set with a bunch of data. This is a highly compact 7 kilobyte content for your page because it only contains content that you need, that you mapped. So you never overfetch, you never, pull megabytes of content in your page state. So, but and it's also fast. So if you do an edge rendering, server side rendering, this is really setting you to a good place to do it, because in order to get fast rendering, especially on the CDN level, you need your content to be available as quickly as possible, and that's really the key.
So no longer can you now finger point to your backend being slow. Now it's all your front end.
No excuses.
No excuses anymore.
Yeah, that we kind of build it. It's not pretty, but it's functional, and I'm sure, Tim, if you spend 20 minutes on it, it's gonna
Yeah,
be
you can get quite far with a few extra options and a bit of CSSing to get this in a really decent place.
exactly. Well, that's all we had for you today in terms of demo.
Yeah, we are a bit over time, but there were still quite a few people online. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I'm going to quickly check our stats to see if anyone is still here, and if so, feel free to ask. And otherwise, we'll probably just close our stream down and go to next. Okay, so our it's interesting. Our LinkedIn stream is up, is done because it was the hour. There you go.
Ah,
So.
good.
Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you Alex for the awesome demo, all from scratch. That's how you do it. Cheers and
and
thanks.
and as YouTubers say, if you have an idea for the next topic, we have a couple options, but please comment, put it in the comments.
Okay,
That's
so Booba loved the demo. Well, I did too. So feel free to reach out to us. You know us by now. And ask for anything crazy, and we can probably do it. All right.
awesome. Thank you so much, folks.
Cheers, everyone. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.